Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. I hope we are all doing fantastic today. Welcome to the RMS webinar series. Today's topic is managing reservations like a pro. My name is Dan Mostyn, and I'm a senior training specialist here at RMS. I'm also joined by Lindsay Hansen, who is one of our training specialists as well. We will be your hosts today. Between the two of us, we bring over 35 years of experience in both indoor and outdoor hospitality, not to mention over 10 years of experience with RMS. Now that you've met us a little bit, why don't we talk about the fun that we're going to be having today? So today we're going to be guiding you through some best practices and how they can become successful tools for your staff to streamline your day-to-day operations and enhance the guest experience. A few of the topics we'll be covering today within today's webinar are going to be booking chart reservations, updating the guest profile, replacing guests, folio modifications, and a few other topics similar to that. Now, before we jump into the real fun we're going to have, I just wanted to go over some basics of the reservation screen. Now, RMS is pretty customizable, as you guys all know. So you may see some different options on our screen versus your screen, but the main layout does remain the same for all properties. So here on the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to have our guest details column. This is going to be the information of the guest for this particular reservation. Here in the middle, we have our reservation details, and this is going to be all the details of this specific reservation. And on the right-hand side, we have all of our account information. This is going to be that financial information for this reservation. Now, we also have a few different colors that we all want to be aware of. So first we see these blue fields. Anything in blue is going to be a mandatory field. Something does need to be entered in here to save a reservation. We also see white fields. These white fields are going to be set as optional in your database. And then finally, we have yellow fields. These yellow fields are system generated, so not something you would be directly editing. Now that we know the basics, let's dive right on in. And Lindsay, I'm going to throw it over to you to maybe go over some scenarios through the day.
Sounds great, Dan. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. So we are going to kind of approach this webinar very similar to how many of you may start your day or your shift. Now, most of you will come into the office and you start preparing for your arrivals and assessing your departures. So to do this, we're going to want to start by pulling a few reports. Now, let's go ahead and start with the first report that we're going to pull for our day, which is our overdue arrivals. Now, this report can be found, like all of our other reports, in that blue sidebar menu under reports. But we are actually going to take a look at a really fun feature that's about to become your new best friend, and that is the menu search. So up at the top, just below our logo, you'll notice that it says menu search. And if you start to type in the words of a report or a certain feature functionality that you're looking for, like overdue arrivals, it'll go ahead and sort that out and filter it down for you so it's much easier to locate. We can see that it is found under reports, daily reports, and overdue arrivals. Now, if we click on this, it's going to go ahead and navigate us to the build screen. And from within our build screen, we can do a number of different things. We can actually schedule these reports to send out on a regular frequency, or we can simply build this report. If you guys are interested in learning how to schedule some of these reports, we highly suggest you check out the Help Center, where all of that information is readily available at your fingertips. So to build this report, we want to look at a couple components first. One, are you operating within an enterprise setting? Well, if you are, meaning you have multiple locations within your database, you'll want to select your property here and exclude any that may not apply. Now, if you're not operating within an enterprise setting, maybe you're a standalone property and you're the only property within your database, it will automatically default to your property here. Now, we can also include or exclude any rental types. Maybe we have a facilities area or a specific area listed as a rental type that shouldn't be included in this report for whatever reason that may be. We can also select the display name and choose either the option of displaying the name or the rental number specifically. And then lastly, if you have groupings set up for your reporting capabilities, you can select those reporting or grouping options in this section here below. Now, before we move too far, I want to make note of that little gold star that you can see just below where Dan's mouse cursor is. By ticking this little star, is going to add this report to your favorites, meaning you'll be able to much more quickly locate this at a future date. So really super handy dandy tools that you can utilize when building any of your reports. Now that we have the information we want to look at, we can go ahead and we can build this report to see if there are any arrivals that are overdue. Meaning, maybe they were supposed to come in yesterday, but when you left the office, they still hadn't arrived. So we want to make sure that any of those reservations are addressed. Now, this is a perfect example of what we would like to see. No overdue arrivals. Everybody is in-house and seated in their rooms or sites or whatever applies to your property. So let's go ahead and exit out of the screen, and we can go ahead and move on to the next portion of our day. Now, we know who's arriving, and we are going to now dive into the screen that most of you guys are going to spend a lot of your time in throughout the day. This is a screen that you guys are going to spend a lot of time in for not only the check-in process, but the check-out process as well. And that screen is more commonly referred to as the in and out movement screen. Along our quick access icons at the very top, we have the fourth one in that looks like an abacus. And yes, I probably dated myself by saying the word abacus, but that's completely okay. If we navigate to that blue sidebar menu on the left-hand side, we can also navigate to reservations and locate our in and out movement screen from that subcategory as well. Now, when we get into our in and out movement screen, we're going to see quite a bit of things, and we're going to dive through and take you through some of the most important and key components of this screen so that you can utilize it to the best of your ability. Now, as we move through all of these, we are going to touch on if you are or if you aren't an enterprise property. If you are, we want to make sure that most importantly, we are focused on the appropriate property. So selecting from our dropdown and selecting the appropriate property for our specific location. Now, if for any reason we are not an enterprise and again, we're a standalone property, it will default to you. And for our example purposes, we're going to focus on all of our properties from this point moving forward. Just for case of simplicity, of course. Now, along the left-hand side, we see our filters, and these filters are going to kind of help us differentiate who's arriving, who's departing, and who's already here. And then on the right-hand side, we'll dive into the list that we'll see as they get populated for each different category. So under our filters, we have the first three icons that wind up showing in green. And these are going to be our arrivals. So these are people that are arriving today or expected to arrive today. Arriving means that they're on their way in. They're going to be here. We're going to see them soon. And we can see that we've got Mike and Jeff listed on the right-hand side there, Mr. Smith and Mr. Dunn. Now, our expected arrivals are those reservations that have yet to have the status moved from confirmed or unconfirmed to arrived. So they are still expected to arrive, whereas arriving that's just the big group of everybody that's scheduled to come in today. Now, if you're utilizing the guest portal on your IBE on your website, You may have the option to allow your guests to pre-check in. If that's the case, you'll see that here in this list that we show now. Now below that, we have 3 blue sections. We have our checked in, which are guests that have checked in or their status has been changed to arrived. Next, we have our in-house guests of guests who are already here. Maybe they've been here for a week. Maybe they've been here for a month. Maybe they've been here for 2 years. We don't know, but you'll be able to find them and locate them under your in-house guests. And then finally below that, the last blue one we have is day use. And this is going to apply to reservations that have arrived and departed on the same business day. Maybe you have a meeting room where somebody came in at 9 o'clock and they've left at noon. And maybe they're going to come back again at 1 and then leave again at 3. That would be considered a day use. So you may or may not, depending on what your property's needs are. Now below that, we also have, just like we had arriving, we have departing. So we have our guests that have checked out, we have expected departures, as well as those that are departing. Now, just like our arriving and our expected arrivals, we have our departing and our expected departures. And you'll notice that as we go through some of these examples, these numbers are going to constantly change, and they're going to update as the actions to that reservation happens. Now, there's some other ones in here that we're not going to touch on today because they're new and up and coming. But the final 2 that we are going to focus on, because they may impact your day, are going to be the final 2 at the very end, named no-show and canceled. And can you guys guess what those do? I'm sure some of you are shouting out the answers. No-show is exactly that. It is a guest that was scheduled to arrive that has been marked now as a no-show because they didn't show up. And a canceled is exactly that. It's a guest that is called in and their reservation status has been moved to cancel effective today. So let's go ahead and discuss the right-hand side a little bit there, right? And where we want to talk about or touch on is the different columns. Now, the fun part, and if you are familiar with Excel or maybe Google Sheets, you can grab these column headers and move them around. But there's a much easier way to do this. And that is part of the set columns option. So the set columns option is going to be the 2-sided arrow up at the very top. And what this allows you to do is make visible or hide any of the columns that you see here. So maybe it's very minimal as to what you want to see when a guest is arriving and or departing, or even while they're in-house. And so you can simply tick the box next to the line item or the field or column that you would like to make visible, or untick it if you'd like to hide it. Now, you can also select a specific column, highlight it in blue, and then use the blue arrows on the right-hand side to move it up and down in its order. Now, once Dan makes all the adjustments that he'd like to make, these are going to save for his specific user because he's currently the one logged into the system. So if I was to log in, I would see our system defaults because that's what my user profile is set against. Whereas his, not so much, but that's okay. That's the nice part of how we can kind of customize RMS to be what we need it to be. Now, we can see here that with some of our departing guests, we've got their names, we can see their arrival and departure dates, and we can also see their balance as well as their rental number. So let's go ahead and say that maybe after pulling your reports and checking your arrivals and departure, maybe your first departure actually comes into the office and they're ready to check out. So we're going to navigate to our departing or our expected departures. Either one is going to be a safe bet. And we're going to find that Mr. Parker is the guest who's ready to check out. Now, when Mr. Parker comes in, he states, "Hey, I'm ready to depart, but before I leave, can I get a copy of my statement? I feel like something was just a little off." And, you know, he'll find out when he gets his report or when he gets his statement. So let's go ahead and walk through some of the steps that we're going to take to not only provide him a copy of his statement, but make any adjustments to maybe things that are wrong on his account. So we can navigate to our account section of the reservation screen. And we'll notice up on the top right-hand side, we have that little money bag icon. And you'll notice that it's currently in the color red. Now, this is totally okay because the color red signifies to you that there is a balance owed on that account. Now, if you ever see this money bag and it's in the color green, it's letting you know that there's a credit balance on that account. And if that little money bag is black, that means you're at a zero balance, which is exactly where we want to be at the end of this example. So, Dan, let's go ahead and click right into that folio and take a peek at this reservation account for him. Awesome. Now, looking at Mr. Parker's reservation here, we can see that there's a number of charges that may or may not be his. But what we're going to do to provide him a statement is select the top line item so that we include everything on this screen. So by clicking on that top line item, it will highlight it in blue, and we can simply click the statement button up on the top right-hand side. Now, while this statement form is loading, we can see we have a couple different options in order to communicate this form to our guest. We can either email it to the email that we have on file, or we can select the option for print and then click the printer icon up on the top right-hand side to go ahead and populate this statement. Now, when we populate this to him and we hand it to him, Mr. Parker says, "Oh, hold on a minute. Champagne? I'm not that bougie. Could we please take that bottle off? I didn't authorize this." So we can simply remove the one bottle of champagne by locating that line item on the account. Using our mouse to right click on it, we'll then be given a menu. And that menu is going to allow us to void a single transaction. Now, let's go ahead and void that off by clicking that void transaction icon or option from the menu. And we will always be prompted to provide a reason why this transaction is being removed or voided. So for this example, we can say it was just an incorrect entry. We'll select our reason and select the void transaction button. Now we tell Mr. Parker, "Hey, Mr. Parker, we went ahead and took that off." And he says, "Oh, no. I don't drink. You guys don't understand. I need all of this taken off." So we say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's go ahead and remove these other items." Well, because now we have multiple, we have another option to correct this. And that's going to be found with our corrections button up on the top right-hand side. So if we click on that button, we now not only have the void charge option, but we also have the option for void multiple charges. So with this option, we'll select void multiple charges and we'll be prompted to a new window. Here, we'll see all the charges that are available on the account or have been posted to the account. And here we'll simply scroll down and select the specific line items or charges that need to be removed. So we'll take the wine and the champagne off. Again, below we're being prompted to provide a reason as to why. Again, this was an incorrect entry or an error, whichever applies, and we can process this. Wonderful. Now you'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner, there was a green box that popped up, and all that was letting you know is that those multiple charges have been removed. Now, Mr. Parker is super happy. Thank you so much for removing those charges. I truly appreciate it. Let's get me checked out and let's get him on the road. So we're going to go ahead and click on our receipt button up at the top left-hand side to where we can go ahead and take a payment to get this account down to a zero and get them checked out. So we'll create a receipt from that receipt button, and a new window is going to pop open for us here. Now we're going to first select our payment type on the left-hand side, and we'll go ahead and enter in the check number for this one. Keeping in mind that if you do accept checks, you want to make sure that you're utilizing that check number because it's going to act as a reference point later on, should you ever need to go back and review things. Now, the receipt amount that we enter here in the blue section down on the bottom right should match the balance that's on the account. Now you'll notice it automatically pre-populated, and it's designed to do that. So if for any reason this check number was something other than the $1,012.36, we would enter that amount here. Since it's not, we can go ahead and process this payment. And once we do so, we'll see that payment line item take place here in green. We can also see that that account balance is now at 0, which means we have a green light to go ahead and check out Mr. Parker. So we can exit our screen here and select the checkout button from our top right-hand side icons, and we can go ahead and check him out. Now, we are going to be prompted, are you sure this is what you want to do? It sure is. Wonderful. Now, Mr. Parker has exited the office, and so we can then go ahead and exit out of this screen. And as Mr. Parker's walking out, we have Mr. Stark, and he enters, and he too is ready to get on the road. However, unfortunately, Mr. Stark isn't the most happiest of campers, and he experienced a pretty rough night. And he wants to have some type of compensation for the inconvenience he had. So let's go ahead and from our in and out movement screen, as you can see, we were navigated right back. Let's go ahead and find Mr. Stark's reservation from our expected departures list and open that up. Now, he sees on his account, and we'll navigate right on over to that account once more with the little red button or money bag icon. And from here, we can see that, maybe he just wasn't satisfied with his breakfast. He thinks that $100 was a bit excessive and he really just wants to be compensated. So we say, how about this? Mr. Stark, we're going to go ahead and take half of that off for you. How does that sound? And he says, you know what? I can deal with that. So we have the option to utilize what we like to call an assigned credit note, where we can apply a discount or a partial credit to an existing charge on an account. To do so, we will want to go ahead and navigate to our extras charge button up at the top there. And we can either look in our favorite sundries, which are going to be a list of the most commonly used sundry items for your specific property. So again, these are going to look very different from one property to the next. Or down below where we have our description option and our description dropdown, we can start to type in parts of a word or parts of a charge type and locate it here. Now, we can see that we are looking for our guest satisfaction credit for this specific example. So we can see it listed in purple. Now, keep in mind, we're seeing it in purple because we're going to be adding a credit or providing a discount on a charge that already exists. So with that being said, now that we've selected our description, we then need to select the charge in which we're going to credit or discount. So we're going to go ahead to our charge dropdown down below, and just like we did in the other, we're going to select that breakfast package. And the most important piece when utilizing your credit note sundry items here is our unit price. So if we are going to give 50% off and it was $100, we need to enter a price or a credit of a negative $50. Now, by entering this negative 50, this charge knows to charge a credit or again, a discount to the specific charge. Now, if this is the only one we have to do, which in this case it is, we're going to apply an exit and we'll see that discount or that credit applied directly on the account. We'll also see and take note that it took into consideration any taxes that were allocated to that specific sundry item or extras charge item. Wonderful. Now, Mr. Stark is elated. He is just so happy that you guys were able to do that. So again, we'll want to go ahead and collect his payment and get his balance back down to 0. We can utilize that receipt button and create a receipt. And we can go ahead and take payment for this. Again, entering in the receipt amount and making sure that we have the appropriate amount to cover the balance. We can then process, and back to zero we go with the account and balance. And now we can exit him out and check out his reservation. Again, we're going to be prompted to, are you sure? Yes, we are. Now you can see his status has been flipped from that blue arrived to the pink departed. And when we exit out of this screen, we can also take notice that when we go back into our in and out movement screen, we can see where those numbers in our expected departures and our checked out have now changed. You guys are all seeing that, I hope. Fantastic. So now that Mr. Stark has been taken care of, he's going to wander his way out of the office and yet another guest enters ready to depart. Now, this guest is Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Wilson is the group master for a group of 5 friends who they just like to travel together. You know, they have a great time together and here they are. And I apologize because I can't add. We actually have 4 reservations, not 5. So the group master, now Mr. Wilson, he has already paid for everything associated with these reservations. And we can see that very clearly in our expected departures list on the right under the balance column. Everything's at 0. So what we're going to do for this example is show you how you can check out all 4 of these reservations simultaneously instead of having to do it on an individual basis like what we've done in the first couple examples. To do that, all we have to do is tick the boxes next to the reservations that we would like to check out, if only 1 or 2, or if we're going to do all of them, I was going to say all 5, but all 4, but we can go ahead and tick the box up along the header and it will select all of those. So now we can utilize our check out button. However, before we check these out, I want to share with you one quick thing. This option to check out is just as easily done when checking in master reservations. Now, master reservations or group reservations are things that are, there's a lot to them and there's a lot of components to them. And it really does need some more time than what we can spend here today. So we're going to go ahead and plug into the chat a link to our help center that talks specifically about group master reservations and just provides a little bit more detail and a little bit more information for you guys to help self-serve. So we'll pop that into the chat for you guys, and you guys can grab that and bookmark it and have it to utilize in the future. Now, we can go ahead and get these guys checked out, and you'll notice as Dan goes through those steps, clicking that checkout button, we can go ahead and get everyone checked out, and you'll notice that those expected departures and our checked out numbers are going to change as well. All right, and you can see just down below, the math here is correct with 4 reservations have now been checked out. We can also see that within our filter section on the left-hand side, our expected departures are now at 0, and that's fantastic. So with that being said, let's go ahead and focus on our arrivals for the day because we now know that all of our departures, they've gone. So with our arrivals, we have Mr. Smith and his wife, and his wife, my apologies. They arrive and they are just ready to begin their stay. They're so excited. And Mrs. Smith notices, though, that the price didn't really seem the same when they were, signing their registration form. She goes, no, something doesn't look right. And of course, she does what every solid wife does and pulls out her phone and says, look, here's my screenshot that shows the rate is in fact wrong. So let's walk through the steps in how we can correct this and price match to keep them happy. So just like with our departures, we'll double click on Mr. Smith and open up Mike's reservation here. Excuse me. And here, we want to first verify, hey, Mr. Smith, we've got a phone number here on file for you that ends 7898. Is that still the right number? And he says, oh, no. That's my home phone number. That's my landline. Let me give you my mobile. it's going to be 858-427-1200. And for those of you that may have called that, that is actually our support line. So if you need that later on, utilize that and option number 1 to be taken to our support team for help. Now, we're going to go ahead and update that phone number. Now, we've corrected it. So to save it, we're going to click the 3 little dots there up on the top right-hand side and select the option for Save Guest or Save in this instance. Now, once we've saved that, he says, oh, could you please add my wife to the account as well? You know, she may be in and out, and I want to make sure that everything gets put on our account correctly. So we say, of course, Mike, we'll go ahead and we'll get Mrs. Smith added in there. So to do so, we'll navigate to our navigator to the left-hand side of our guest section, and we'll click directly on the word guest. Now, this is going to populate a new little screen for us. And on the top right-hand side, we have a plus icon or a plus symbol. And by clicking that, we can go ahead and add another guest to the record. We can already see that Mike is here and he's our primary. So we're going to go ahead and click that plus icon to add in Mrs. Smith. Now, just like any other reservation screen or when you're creating a reservation and entering guest details, we have the RMS Smart Search here that's going to allow and immediately start searching the system for the last name of that individual. Now, if she's stayed with us before, we'll be able to find her information. And sure enough, there is Jane. So we can double click on her name and populate the guest details here with her information. Now, once we've done this, we can go ahead and select the Allocate and Exit button up on the top right-hand side. And we are being prompted to update the number of adults. Because we've now added a secondary guest to the reservation, the system is automatically saying, hey, you added somebody. Should we add that to the reservation as well? And to confirm, we're going to go ahead and tell it yes. Perfect. Now, to navigate back over to the reservation itself, we'll simply click that little house icon next to the word reservation in our navigator bar, and this will return us to our screen. Now, Mrs. Smith is, she's very adamant that the price averaged out to about $300 a night, not this $333 that we're seeing here in the account section. So let's go ahead and talk about how we can price match this and make sure that her rate is correct. So to do so, it's very simple. We'll click directly on the word base rate. And from this new window, we're going to enter in the average nightly rate. Now, we stated it's supposed to be $300 instead of $333. So we'll simply type in 300 and save and exit or allocate and exit. Now, of course, because we are manually overriding this, we want to make sure that we select the reason appropriate for it. If for any reason these reasons are not set up in your property, you definitely want to speak with your system administrator or even your account manager. So here we'll say that this is a price correction and we'll save and exit. Now, we can see here that the rate is now showing in red. And that is the quick identifier to you to let you know, hey, we manually overrode this. We changed this. And you'll see that now the new average rate per night is 300. They're staying for 3 nights, which equals 900. And with all applicable taxes, they're going to be paying $1,004 for their grand total. Now, we can go ahead and get them checked in and all set. To check them in, we'll first want to take a payment to get their account at a 0 balance. And we can do that by clicking right on the little receipt icon on the right-hand side. And this is another way to take a payment for a reservation. So we can go ahead and select our payment type there on the left and enter in our receipt amount and process our payment. Fantastic. Now we have payment and we can go to the next step, which is checking in this individual. To check them in, we use the button that looks the opposite of the checkout, and we confirm, yes, we would like to check them in. Wonderful. Now, the Smiths have been taken care of, and as they depart and we close out their screen, guess what? Another guest comes in. Yep, never fails. The minute one walks out, another one walks in, right? And if you guys work in busy offices, you see that a lot. So we navigate back to our in and out movement screen here, and we can see that Mr. Dunn is coming in. So we go ahead and we assume that this is Mr. Dunn. So we open that reservation and we can see that there is a note down within this reservation that states that Jeff's wife, Carol, is going to be checking in instead of him. So what we want to do is we actually want to update this reservation and swap out Jeff for Carol so that we have the right information about who's staying at our property. So to do that, we're going to do something very similar to what we did before. Instead, in our guest section here, where we typed over the phone number, instead we're going to click the three little dots up on the right-hand side and select the option to replace the guest. Now, what this will do, instead of typing over and modifying the existing guest record, this is going to allow us to swap Mr. Dunn for Mrs. Dunn. Now, just like what we did before when we were searching for Mrs. Smith, we were starting to add in her information, selecting the last name, and so forth. Now, if she doesn't exist, that's okay. We'll just go ahead and add her in. And of course, we'll want to capture her personal email as well as a phone number because these are required fields according to our system. Once we have all her details in, we can go ahead and click on the little icon up on the top that looks like two individuals shaking hands. This will allow us to replace this guest and exit this screen. And now we can see that Jane is listed as the primary as opposed to Jeff. Now, if you weren't sure or somehow missed that this change had taken place, you can always utilize the audit trail on the navigator on your left-hand side to see the changes that were made. You can also see, if we were to scroll all the way over to the right-hand side, we would be able to see when and who made that change. Wonderful. So now that we have got Jane listed instead of Jeff, we can go ahead and go back to that reservation. Again, we can check them in and take their payment. But before we do any of that, Mrs. Dunn says, "Ooh, could I get a different room maybe? I just think this is a bit much for just me with the city view and all of that. I don't need all the fancy things." So no problem. We'll go ahead and we're going to change that room type for you. And it's as simple as selecting the rental type from the dropdown and selecting something else. Maybe she says, I don't really want the city view. Could I do the ocean view instead? I need a little bit of a break. So of course we switch it around and we now need to assign a new rental number. So we'll select that from the dropdown and select the one most appropriate. Once we have done that, and you'll notice that when we change the rental type, the account information on the top right-hand side has now become bold. And the reason behind that is there was a recalculation in the rate. So there's a couple different things and couple different actions that may adjust or may cause a rate recalculation. But don't worry, guys, we're not going to touch on all of those today because there's so many, but we are going to share a link with you, again, in the chat that takes you to the RMS Help Center and will help you self-serve and talk a little bit more about some of those reasons for a rate recalculation. So now we can go ahead and receipt a payment for this reservation, and we can go ahead and get Mrs. Dunn checked in. So we'll navigate over and take payment. Again, that amount is going to be for the deposit here of $333.56. And we can go ahead and check her in by clicking that check-in button. Wonderful. Fantastic. So we can go ahead and we can exit out of this reservation since we're done with everything that needed to take place here. And as we do so, it's going to navigate us back over to our, oh, hey, look at that. We got a pop-up. And yes, we want to update that rate. Again, talking about that rate recalculation a little bit, you'll see that there was just a little bit of a delay, and it could be the fact that we have so many people here on the webinar today. This is exciting. I think this is one of our largest turnouts. All right, now it looks like a good number of our arrivals are in for the day. And actually we can see right here that our expected arrivals, everybody's in. So we should be good to go, but never fails the phone, the dreaded phones, right? So the phone rings, and upon answering the call, the guest starts to explain that, oh, you know, we're having terrible weather. It's snowing like crazy. It's so cold. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. And the guest is calling in to say, hey, you know, I'm just not going to be there. And the only information that they have about their reservation is the reservation number. So that reservation number they provided us is 445. And we're going to go ahead and enter that up on the top right-hand side and just simply type in 445 for that reservation number. Now, when we hit enter, or if we click on that magnifying glass, it'll automatically populate and open up that specific reservation for us because it's unique to that unique reservation number. Now, what we need to do here is the guest, you know, you explain to him, hey, our cancellation policy is fill in the blank. But for our example, the cancellation policy is equal to the night of one night, including taxes. And we can see that they've already paid that in their deposit amount of $81.43. So what we're going to do is simply apply our cancellation fee and then cancel the reservation itself. So to do that, we can go ahead and navigate to our little green money bag icon. Again, remembering it's green because we have a credit on the account. And from here, we're going to go into our extras charges. And from the extras charges, just like we've seen before, we have our favorites, which are most commonly used. Generally, it's about 10 to 12. And we can select the option for cancellation fee. Now, again, if it's not in our favorites, we can always search for it in the description drop down below. Now, our unit price, again, because we know that this is capturing the deposit that they've already paid, we're going to type in that same amount of $81.43. Once we've done that, we can simply apply an exit, and we'll see where that payment has now been absorbed by our cancellation fee, and we have a zero balance on our account. From here, we can go ahead and we can exit out of this reservation, and we need to do the most crucial piece. We need to change the status from confirmed to canceled. And to do so, we're going to click on that little bell icon as it leads all of our icons that we have there, and simply change that status to canceled. Now, anytime we change the status like this, it's always going to say, hey, wait a minute, are you sure? Yes, we're absolutely sure. So we can confirm that and then select a reason. And for this one, we said it was weather, so we can consider that a natural disaster, really, and apply and exit. Now, there is the option to enter in a cancellation note. So if there's any other details that you wanted to add in, you absolutely could here, but not necessary for this example. Now we'll see that that status has been flipped from the really pretty green that we saw where it was confirmed to now the very bold in your face red saying, hey, they are canceled. So we can go ahead and we can exit out of this screen. And of course, the minute we hang up with the Martins here, Miss Ashley, we get yet another phone call. And this time, the guest is somebody who stays quite often, very familiar with your property. And I'm sure you guys all have that one individual, right? Now, when this caller calls in, he says, oh my goodness, I totally booked the wrong days. I'm scatterbrained. I'm all over the place. I need to correct my reservation. But not only that, I need to make another one too. I just love coming to your guys' place, right? I'm sure you guys all have that one guest. Hopefully you have more than one that feel that way about you. So let's go ahead and see what Mr. Rogers is talking about. So Mr. Rogers has stayed with us hundreds of times. And just like what we did with entering in the reservation number, we can type in Rogers and it'll automatically populate because he is the only Steve Rogers with a reservation active with us right now. So he says, hey guys, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm not coming in on the 21st. I'm coming in on the 27th, silly goose. So to update his dates, we're going to simply click on the arrival date and adjust his arrival date to be arriving on the 27th of January instead. Now, he also tells us that when he comes in on the 27th, he's only going to be here for a couple of nights. So we say, okay, well, what date are you going to be checking out then instead? And he says, well, I'm going to leave on Monday the 29th. So we can adjust the arrival date to be the 27th, and then we can select the departure date to be the 29th on the right-hand side, and then we would select apply to apply those dates. Now, when we read this back to Mr. Rogers, we say, all right, Mr. Rogers, so we have you coming in on Saturday the 27th, and we have you here for 2 nights. And he says, wait, 2 nights? No, that should be 3 nights. And then he starts double backing on himself and whatnot. So we say, okay, great. So it is supposed to be 3 nights. Easy peasy. So instead of the 2 nights, we'll simply type over the 2 and enter it as 3. You'll notice that when Dan does this step, only the departure date will stay. And that is because the system is designed to understand that the arrival date is certain and the departure date follows. So now the departure date has been updated. We have it at 3 nights and we are good to go. So fantastic. Now, while you're on the phone with Mr. Rogers, he says, that's great, fantastic. I'm going to be there the 27th to the 30th. Thank you for correcting my nights. Thanks for correcting my stay. But I love you guys so much. I want to come again. So we can go ahead and save this reservation. And he says, but there's one little caveat. Is there any way that I can have pull through number 3? It's my favorite spot in your whole property. And we say, you know what, Mr. Rogers, we've got you. We've got you covered. We're going to make sure that you get it. Maybe your property, confirms or allows a guest to pick their sites. Maybe they don't. In this instance, we're going to say that they do. So we say, sure, Mr. Rogers, let's take a look at this. So we exit from this screen and we're going to navigate over to our booking chart. So with this booking chart, we're going to, we're going to exit this screen and navigate to the booking chart, which is the letter B up at the top there. Now, the booking chart can also be found if we navigate to that blue sidebar menu under charts and select the option for booking chart. And you'll see here, now we've got our booking chart. You can also see that there's a yellow reservation right smack dab in the middle, and it says Rogers on it. Well, oddly enough, that's the last reservation we were actively working in. So on the booking chart, it's going to display to us here in yellow. And we say, okay, great. Mr. Rogers, we can get you in. What date did you want to come in to stay in site pull through number 3? And he says, well, I think I want to bring my wife in for Valentine's Day, but the weekend before. So we're going to come in on Friday the 9th and we're going to check out Monday morning. So we can, Using our mouse and using our mouse clicks, we're going to left click, hold, and drag across to the dates that we would like to secure. Now, we are given a submenu or a menu here when we release that mouse click. We always, always, always want to select the option for add reservation so that it retains the dates as well as the site that we have selected or the room that we've selected. So we'll select add reservation, and you'll notice once the screen loads up a little for us here, we can see the arrival date, the departure date, the number of nights, and we can see our rental type as well as the specific rental number. Now, to book this reservation, of course, most important, we want to make sure that all of our mandatory fields have been completed. So, of course, we'll start with our guest details on the left and enter in Mr. Rogers's information. Perfect. Now we've got him in, and we want to make sure that we have the appropriate booking source because that's also one of our required fields, but we also want to make sure that our rate type is correct. Now, this one is showing a group rate because on our booking chart, maybe we utilize the group rate because we only book group reservations through our booking chart, whatever that scenario is. But what we want to do here is we want to remove the rate type that's existing and then select from our dropdown and apply the appropriate rate type for this reservation. Now, he's coming for 3 nights. He's a regular guest and he's a really nice guy, but we're just going to give him the nightly rate. Perfect. So now that we have all of this information here, we can go ahead and we can save this reservation. Now you'll notice, again, because we changed that rate type from group to nightly, the account section, that rate is now in bold and it is showing quite a bit more. Awesome. Now, we've got this gentleman all taken care of, and it looks like we might have a chat coming in. Did we have a question pop in there? Maybe not. Okay, maybe not. I thought I saw a question.
Okay on questions for right now.
Okay, perfect. I thought I saw one pop in, but I was mistaken. Perfect. All right. So we've gotten Mr. Rogers taken care of. We give him the reservation number and we say, hey, guy, thanks. We'll see you the next time. We look forward to seeing you and we can't wait. So we can go ahead and save and exit this screen. And as we exit out, we're still here in the booking chart, right? And we have yet another guest that comes into the office and he says, hey guys, I'm Mr. James and I'm over in site, pull through number 5. And I'm having a really great time, but I'm just not getting along with the other guy that's behind me. Maybe that's Mr. Smith over there and pulled through number 2. We don't know. But he says, is there any way that we can move to a different room or a different area? And we say, of course, absolutely. So to do that, we'll simply click on Mr. James's reservation from the booking chart here. We'll click, we'll hold, and we'll drag that over to any other site within this category or even within another category. Once we have moved him to the space that we would like to move him to, we simply release that mouse click. And we can see that he's now been moved from pull through number 5 to pull through number 4. Now, finally, we have reached the later part of our day and we're ready to start closing out. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, it means more reports, right? So we're going to take you through some of the reports that you'll want to run before the end of your day. Now, most important is going to be those overdue departures. We want to make sure that everybody who was scheduled to arrive has made it in. So we can navigate to that blue sidebar menu And we can utilize our menu search tool, and we can search for overdue departures. Again, typing in key pieces of that will show us that under reports, daily, and overdue departures, that is where our report is housed. So just like the overdue arrivals, when we pull this report, we'll then be given the same exact options to build this report out. You'll notice we have that same option to schedule the report as well as to add this to your favorites menu by clicking that little star down at the bottom. Now we can go ahead and simply build this report and confirm that all of our departures have been checked in. And we'll see here momentarily that it looks like exactly that. Perfect. 0 is what we like to see. Now, the last report that we are going to walk you through is going to be our cash transactions. Now, the cash transactions report is going to be the report that you want to run to make sure or ensure that you have balanced out any cash payments, any checks, as well as any credit card transactions that may have been made throughout the day. So again, using our menu search there on the left, we can type in the word cash and we can see all of the different reports that have cash in the name. But if we keep typing transactions, we get cash transactions, which is located under reports and under accounting. Now, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that report is going to show you all payments that have been taken on your or in your database, right? So as this screen loads, and I apologize for a little bit of the lag that we have here. We've just got so many people here. It's bogging the system down a touch, but that's okay. We'll push through. So with this, we can go ahead and select our transactions for our business day. It will always default to today because that's the day that we're most concerned about. We don't care about yesterday. We're not worried about tomorrow yet. We're focused on today. So we have, again, more options. We can select to include or exclude certain properties if working within an enterprise setting. We can look at different users, departments, and so on. We could even go so far as to look at specific payment methods like cash versus check, or if we wanted to look at specific credit card types, maybe MasterCard versus Visa or Discover or American Express. Now, there are some more options that you can utilize here by clicking the more options on the right-hand side. And again, this is just going to give you more details or more pieces to sort and filter this report to show you what you would like to see. For this example, and in the essence of time, we're going to go ahead and just simply build this report to take a look and see what would we see on this report if it was a normal business day. And we can see here that we had a grand total of $9,440.90. And by clicking those little plus icons for each one of the payment types on the left, we can see how that money has been broken out. And you can also see that with this being an interactive report, you can actually click on specific account numbers and even reservation numbers to quickly view that specific either account or reservation to double check or maybe confirm or correct anything that may need to be adjusted later on. So that brings us to the last thing, and that is the end of your day. We have completed a life in or a day in the life of your front desk in just one short hour's time. So I hope you guys have enjoyed everything we have showed you today. And Dan, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. That was a lot of really great information. I just wanted to take a moment and open it up for questions. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I wanted to open it up and see if anybody had any questions for us. We do have our Q&A available if you'd like to drop them in there, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. like we're having a couple people drop off, so hopefully they're feeling good with questions. So I will take this moment while we're waiting just to say thank you for joining us today. We do have a lot of great webinars in the works coming up, so please keep an eye on those emails, but we will remain on for a few more minutes if anybody does have any questions. Happy to try to get those answered as best as possible.
And thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate you taking your time to spend with us.